We continue our discussion of the marital duties and status of women in halacha, causes for divorce, etc. We've reviewed the writings of Maimonides and of Rav Shira Gaon, and we saw that Maimonides basically undid the beneficial decree in favor of the women that was created by the Geonim. We're now reading an entry from the commentary of Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, Ramban, Nachmanides, on the Chumash. Ramban is late 12th and mainly 13th century. Born in Spain and eventually towards the end of his life came to Israel. Was an illustrious leader, steeped in both halacha, Kabbalah, wrote also poetry, commentary on the Chumash, was a community leader, was involved in the disputations in Barcelona. And in his writings, he sometimes has this negative attitude towards the women, which is influenced by German Jewish teachings, as we've seen in his attitude towards the Nida, some by the Kabbalah. But he also shows here sensitivity when he speaks on Shemot, chapter 21, verse 9, She'era lo yigra. This is the section in the Torah that speaks about a man who sells his daughter as a maidservant. In its original context, it was meant to protect girls from being sold by their parents, because they could only be sold towards the purpose of marriage, and if the master decided not to effectuate this marriage, she would be free and on her own, and then the father or the former master would not have any control over her. However, Ramban comments here on the words she'era lo yigra. He will not prevent from her the she'er. She'er is understood in the context of she'er basar, a connection of the flesh. So here it's intimacy. Says Ramban, שלא ימנע ממנו בשרה, כלומר, הבשר הראוי להביאו בשר הבעל אשר הוא עמה לבשר אחד. He should not deny his wife what she deserves, which is the flesh or the physical contact. ועניין הכתוב שאם ייקח אחרת, this comes to teach us what is the law when he marries another wife. If he marries another wife, קירוב בשרה של זו וכסות מיתתה ועדות דודיה, לא יגרע ממנה כי כן משפט הבנות. He must show intimacy to her, sleep with her, fulfill her physical needs, because this is how he has committed himself to treat his wife. והטעם שלא תהיה האחרת יושבת לו על מיטה כבודה והיו שם לבשר אחד. So here the interesting thing is that after Nachmanides explains the halacha, he moves into the emotional realm and describes the situation in which that wife will find herself if she's abandoned by the husband. And he says, שלא תהיה האחרת יושבת לו על מיטה כבודה, that the other woman will sit on a wonderful bed, and there they will become one flesh. וזו עמו כפילגש ישכב עמה בדרך מקרה ועל הארץ כבעל אישה זונה, ולכן מנועו כתוב מזה. Meanwhile, he will abandon his first wife and treat her as a mistress, will be with her haphazardly and not in a respectable way, almost as if she is a prostitute. And therefore, the Torah prevented him from doing that. So here we see the concern for the status of the woman. Of course, it's not in the ideal of situation. We talk about a maidservant that was sold for marriage and about another wife. But within that context, we have to understand that the biblical society is not the society that we have today. And this is exactly why the Torah created these laws, to regulate and start educating the society of the time. Similarly, in his commentary to Shemot 22:15, Ramban writes the following: this speaks about the case of a woman who was enticed by a man to have sexual relationships, and the Torah says that he must marry her. So one might think that she has to marry him also, no matter regardless of whether she wants it or not. Ramban says that he will not marry her against her will, but rather it is a way to protect her. And he says this: "V'chen derech bnei hagdolim le'enos benot hapechutim b'ma'ala asher en lahem koach kenegdam." It is common that the nobility, the noblemen, force sexual relationships on the women of lower classes who have no legal power to stand up to them. ולכן אמר באונס לא תהיה לאישה על כורחו. Therefore they said that if one enticed or violated a woman, he must marry her, even if he does not want to. And he says that the rabbis explain in Ketubot, in Tractate Ketubot 39:2, Ben hi ben avia yicholin le'akev, that this is not against her will, and even her father can intervene. Ki anenu agun shikahena al korham ve'aseh ima shtei ra'ot, because it would be inappropriate for him to take her against her will. That also, if that would be the law, it would give a weapon to men to marry whomever they want if they entice her or violate her against her will, and then they will be led to wedding. So Raman explained that is only to protect her, but if she's not interested, this will not happen. And she does not have to lower herself to be with him because of her sin. And the right way, the way of justice, is that the decision regarding marriage should be in her hand and not in his hand, and if there is a marriage, it will be against his will, but not against her will. So we don't leave the women at the mercy of powerful and violent people. So from here we segue to our next section, which is women's status in responsa and Genizah, and that is also related. It's just the difference between looking at halacha as it is in codified works such as Mishneh Torah or Shulchan Aruch, and between looking at them at the real life context in responsa and in the letters from the Genizah. The importance of that is to see the Sityan life, to see the process that leads to the decision that later on has been legislated into the halacha. So the first one that we're going to look at is Teshuvah by Rav Paltoi Gaon, who lived in Iraq in the 9th century. And we don't have the original Teshuvah, but has been ascertained that it is Rav Paltoi Gaon who's the author of the Teshuvah. And it's cited by the Maharam of Rothenburg, who lived in Germany in the 13th century. And that's how Maharam writes, based on the Teshuvah of Rav Paltoi Gaon. He says this: כן נראה לי כל בן ברית חייב לכבד את אשתו יותר מגופו, עולה עמו ואינה יורדת עמו. He says that in his opinion, every man, he speaks about ben berit, meaning a Jew or a circumcised person, because this is the world they live in. But of course, that would apply to everyone. And everyone must respect his wife more than he respects his own body. And here it comes with several maxims that are based on sayings of Hazal, of the rabbis in the Mishnah and the Talmud. Ola imo ve'ena yoredet imo. A woman must ascend a level when she gets married and not descend. So he must bring her up. Be'ulat ba'al ketiv, ba'aliyato ve'lo biridato. And also, there's a wordplay on the word be'ulat ba'al, which literally means married to a man, but they read the word be'ula as be'ula, like going up. Again, that she has to go up and not down. Lehayim nitna ve'lo letza'ar, that also the marriage is given for life and not for sorrow. That might be based on the pasuk in Kohelet, Re'eh hayim misha asher ahavta, find life with a woman whom you love. And also it says, Misefer ketubah nilmod, we can learn from the ketubah, where it says, Ana eflah ve'okir ve'ezon, the husband commits to work, to sustain, and to respect. Ve'amaket ishto, mekublani, sheyesh yoter le'ahmir bo mi b'maket havero. That he says that he has a tradition that if one raises his hand against his wife, he should be dealt with more strictly than if he did that against his friend, because he is not obligated to give extra or special honor to his friend, but he is to his wife. And this is not the way of Israel, and the one who does that must be excommunicated and banished from the community, should be punished and even flogged physically. And that is the really extreme. Aflakot yado im ragil bechach. That's the Maharam of Rothenburg in Germany, who says that if a husband acts with violence towards his wife, the court is allowed to consider amputation, which is unheard of before that. And he bases his defense of the woman on Teshuvot HaGeonim. He says, Im yirotza latzet, yotzi v'yiten k'tuba. If she files for a divorce, he must let her go and pay all the financial commitment as written in the ketubah. And his reference to the response of the Geonim is that a woman who complains that she cannot live with her husband's mother and sisters because they mock her and curse her, the husband must let her find her another place to live. He cannot force her to live with his family, and if he cannot find another place for her, or he cannot afford it, and she's not willing to live under those conditions, he must give her a get and give her a ketubah, pay all of her expenses and the financial commitment. Again, he mentions Hava was the mother of all living beings. She was giving to life and not to sorrow. And in this particular case that the Maharam speaks about, he says that it was the aunt of the husband who caused strife to the wife, and he says you must drive her away from the home and let your wife live a respectful life, and if you don't do that, you will be punished. From here, we're going to go, because we're going by time, we're looking at several letters from the 11th century, going chronologically. This was 9th century, now we're going to the 11th century, several letters that were found in the Genizah. So, the first letter is a letter by a man by the name of Dosa, to a man by the name of Dosa ben Yoshua, and that was written to him by his mother from Egypt. It was written in Arabic, and apparently we don't know if it was written in her handwriting or by a scribe. But here what she says. It starts in Arabic. كتابي يا ولدي وأعز الخلق علي وعندي أطل الله بكك وأدام عظك وتأيدك وسعادتك وسلامتك. So she writes here, I write to you, my son, who is very dear to me from all people. May God give you long life and will continuously help and support you. May give you joy and peace, and will bestow His mercy upon you. I am in Raqqa now. These people know where Raqqa is in Iraq. The family was originally from Latakia in Syria, and others went to Egypt. So she says, I am healthy. May God give you long health. She says, I am tired of writing to you, my son, without getting a response. And I don't know why the familial connection, why the family relationships are not so strong with you. From your brother, may God guard him, I get a lot of letters, but never among them is a letter from you. And both of you are in the same place. Don't you know that when I get a letter from you, it is as if I saw you? Don't you know that my heart goes out to get news from you? What could be easier for you than writing a letter and calm me down? This was written about 1,000 years ago. It's so similar to complaints of mothers today, of the children not calling, not texting, etc. But we see also the way that the society in the Middle East lived. People were traveling. They were in between Syria, Egypt, Iraq. They were also on the traveling to Spain and Morocco and other countries. She says, your brother says that he's going to pray in Yerushalayim. That's a rare testimony that people would do pilgrimage to Yerushalayim in the 11th century, and your brother plans to come to us. So I ask you, please, to encourage him to do so and go with him and let him bring his sons as well. Because I really tried to I really start thinking that you did what my enemies wanted and you have spread across many distant towns. I pray to God, my son, that those 3 years will not be counted as the years of my life. So she's experiencing now 3 years of separation from her children, and who traveled away for business. She says, I waited for the summer to get your letters, but the summer has come, but I didn't read a letter from you. I wanted you to let me know how long will you stay in Fustat, in Egypt, to just call me before my death. And I would be very joyous if I knew that you were close to us, either in Jerusalem or in this country. And in Arabic, she calls Yerushalayim Al-Quds. من كانت قريب منا في القدس وفي هذا الديار. So we see here in evidence that people lived in Yerushalayim and in the 11th century. I beg God to do only good with you, and I fast and pray from you day and night. So it's a very touching letter, and it's good for us to see that evidence of women who are the mothers of families, businessmen who traveled all over. She's learned. She expresses herself very well in that letter. Another letter is sent to Ismail ben Barhun of Tahirt. It was a family of merchants from Tahirt, and she sends it to Egypt. In that case, we know that the scribe is a man, Sadqa bin Ayash, and it was written at around 1020, the beginning of the 11th century. She, like the mother of Dosa in the previous letter, this woman rebukes her brother for going on a business trip and going to Spain as well. She says, my dear brother sent the same blessings as in the other letter that we saw. It was very common, still common today in Arabic flowery openings and introductions. She says, I wish for you that everything will work well and that you will be able to meet your son. Your uncle, your cousin Tayyib, has arrived as I was sitting at the wall, accompanying those who are leaving and welcoming those who come in. So she's maybe sitting at the port, waiting to see a familiar face. I pray to God to let me know where you go and to keep me posted and inform me that you are okay. Ben Ganduba, another man, arrived, and he said that you're going to travel from there to Andalus, to Spain. And that was the last thing that I could have expected. Please, my brother, come back to your house and to your source, although you have excuses. That, and here she means that she's afraid that something will happen to him, and she doesn't want him to be to be challenged. Please find someone else who could do that. She goes on to say, my brother, have you seen al-Najah, probably his mother? You would not have recognized her. She has turned very old. She's as what takes people to age in a year, she has aged in 1 month. I pray to God that she would not remain like that without your life. She needs you. She's waiting for you, and I beg for you to come back. Same thing she says about his mother-in-law, and she speaks more about her concern for her brother. Again, another example of the relationships, the society of the time, the business trips that people would take, and the burden would fall on the women. Here, the last document that we're going to survey from the Genizah was written by Bahia. It's a document that testifies it's a deed of sale in which Bahia Bat Yosef ibn Aukal, also Ibn Aukal is a family of merchants, and the woman Bahia Bat Yosef gives as a gift the maidservant Nujaim to her husband's cousin, and that cousin releases the maid, thus making her Jewish. The background of this story is that a man by Yosef ben Bishel received this Edomite maidservant as a gift from his husband's cousin Bahia, and he released her. She's called Edomite, and the term Edom probably refers to the Byzantine Empire, and that's maybe she was a captive of war, a Christian slave. She's called Nujaim from the word Najm. Najm means star, bright star, and there's the paper trail of who owned her before, and we have this document that attests to us that women owned slaves, both men and women, and that there was an official process in passing them from one person to another, and then those slaves eventually were released, probably considered Jews, and married into Jewish families. Similar process took place in Germany. It is attested to in the commentary of Tosafot in Avodah Zarah. In Tosafot, the commentary of Tosafot, Avodah Zarah, Nun Zayin Amud Bet, page 57, side 2. The Tosafot speak about the question of when would a slave would be considered like a Jew after he's being released, and they say, the authors of the Tosafot say, "En halachat Yishmuel be'avadim shemalu v'lo tavlu le'atzrich yud bet chodesh." We don't follow the halacha of Shemuel that a servant, a slave who has converted to Judaism through circumcision but did not do tevilah, we don't follow the rule that Shmuel requires 12 months until the tevilah. And he says, "V'chen haya minhag bnei Ashkenaz shenoga'im ha'avadim bayayin achar shemalu v'tavlu miyad." The custom among Ashkenazi communities is that it's Germany, that the slaves were able to touch wine immediately after their milah and tevilah, meaning that the conversion process was considered final. They did not require the people who converted to Judaism to have an observation period and see if they are truly Jewish. And this was a common practice among all Jews, wherever they lived, to expand the community by the conversions of slaves. This way they could, when they lived in isolated places, didn't have enough eligible people to marriage, they could rely on that. At a certain point, that has been stopped because the church was not happy with the practice of Jews of converting Christian slaves, even though they were not of the same nationality. Usually, they were from Eastern Europe, in Germany, and in Arab lands they were from the Byzantine Empire. So, in this document, it says this is to attest that we, the elders, who testify, and this is in Hebrew, by the way. This is not in Arabic translated. It says, "B'ktav hazeh b'yom ken v'chen." They write the date. "We are witnesses that the Bahia, the daughter of Yosef ben Okal, who was married to Mabuba Kohen, be my witnesses and buy from me, and not buy me, effectuate the deed that my maidservant Nujaim, whom I own and I bought, and all of her possessions, and all of her accessories, and all the debt that my husband owed me, I gave this with her. I gave this maidservant to Yosef ben Bishr Kohen, and she completely belongs to him. And none of my heirs can negate this document. And following that, we have the official document of shihur, of release, that comes from the buyer, Ana Yosef ben Bishr Anoda ben Kirita. The buyer Yosef writes, it should be known that I, with my own free will, wrote that document, which is a ketav get, meaning that a release from slavery. Hararit v'shahrarit, I have freed and released Nujaim from Ha'edomiyah, Nujaim the Edomite, and all other names that you ever had, who used to be my servant, and now I have released you, and you own yourself. And that's important. V'rashi'ad v'shalita le'me'alu li'inaseh b'kehalad Yisrael u'l'kayma zar'a b'Yisrael, and you are allowed to enter the Israelite community and to marry to whomever you want, and your children are allowed to teach and to learn the laws of the Torah. And you have Igeret Hafushin Kedav Moshe Israel. You have a letter of release according to the laws of Moshe and Israel. We now continue to a responsa that is a responsa of Maimonides from the 12th century now, chapter 34 in the Shalosh Tshuvot of Maimonides, and this was originally written in Arabic. I'm translating immediately directly to English, and this Teshuvah is telling that we see the life conditions and different situations that would take place in this case is in Egypt. Sheila. The question is about a man who married a woman, a girl, when she was only 9 years old, and so we see that they practiced the marriage at a young age, but as we'll see later, she got pregnant when she was 16. So the marriage was not effectuated. Probably they have waited until she would be old enough. But he married her, and he entered some kind of a partnership between himself, his mother, and her sister, or it's not clear if it's the sister of the mother-in-law, probably the sister of the mother-in-law, and they all live in one court, in one apartment. And the mother of that man, the mother-in-law, wrote a document of commitment to take care of the wife for 10 years, but she only did it for 7 years. After 7 years, the mother-in-law said, I have no more money, I cannot sustain you. The man had nothing to his name, and he only sustained her for 2 months. Then, now she's 16, she became pregnant and she gave birth to a boy. But when the father saw that it is hard for him to take care of the expenses, he left the child with his mother. The child was only 9 months old, and he left and traveled for 3 years in Israel and Damascus. And when he left, he didn't leave anything for her, even not a dinner for that night, not for her, not for the baby. He came back with nothing on him, and he was held at the customs at the border crossing. That is masa gulgol, it is jizya, more not the crossing but the census that everybody had to pay per capita, and he couldn't even pay that until his father paid for him. And eventually the mother and the wife paid it, because apparently his father was not in good terms with him, so he had to pay it back to the father. And he came back to his house, Aron ve'Arya, naked or maybe literally, maybe virtually. He had nothing to his name. He lived in town for another 2 years. The woman get pregnant again, and again the father abandoned her with the 2 babies, Now, the older one was already a year and a half, and he traveled again without leaving her anything to eat. Again, being missing, absent for 3 more years. Now that woman has turned 25 years old, and she lives in tremendous poverty and misery with 2 children who are hungrier or more hungry than satisfied. And all that time that she lived with him, he never bothered to get oil to light a lamp, neither on a regular day or Shabbat or Yom Tov. And the only time that she could see light is if she enters his mother's house or his brother's house, who live in the same courtyard. And her poverty and tough situations have exhausted her energies. So up to this point, it seems that Maimonides is on the side of the husband, of the wife, because he describes how he is careless and irresponsible and abandoned his wife in such bad situation. And the brother of that woman was a teacher. He would teach young children how to read the Tanakh, and she was knowledgeable and knew how to read the Tanakh. Another interesting fact: here's a woman who's knowledgeable, and she asks her brother to let her teach also, in order to make some money for herself, and she did that for about 6 years. Then, after her brother traveled, and he was absent from the school, she replaced him and taught all of the children for another 4 years. At that point, the older son is 17 years old, and she took him with her to serve as an assistant to teach the children. בשביל לדבר עם הגברים אשר ביניהם אצלה, והיא גם כן בשביל הנשים אשר באות לבקש ילדיהן. At that point they try to follow the laws of modesty which are written in the Talmud regarding the running of the school, where a male teacher speaks to the fathers of the children and a woman speaks to the women. And Maimonides goes back to the husband. It says from the day those children were born, the father never paid their per capita tax, never paid their tuition, never bought them any garments or shoes. And this wife is already under his custody, so to speak, for 25 years. Now she's 34. He never even bought a mat for the house for them to step on, never bought a pillow or a cushion or any utensil or object that needs to be used at home. Even the oil that she uses flex oil that she uses to light the menorah, the candles, if she doesn't buy it, she cannot light a candle at home. And she and her children have no benefit from him, even in speaking, except for curses and bad language. Now that man comes and says, either you have to sit home like other women. I don't like the fact that you are independent. I want you to sit at home. And if you don't want to sit at home, give me permission to marry another woman. The wife answered, I have already grew tired from the poverty, and I never tasted real life until the day I started teaching. She said, if you want to get divorced, it is okay with me, and I'm not going to hold you back, but I will never let you marry another woman. So, in a twisted way, she comes now under the category of moredet, as if it were, because she says either we get divorced or you cannot marry another woman. And now that man never spends time at home. He sleeps in his mother's house, and if he buys anything, it is for him and his mother. And his wife does not know about that. And despite all that, he finds the time and the audacity, he doesn't say audacity, I'm saying that, to complain about her to anyone who would listen in the city, that she does not fulfill his physical needs and she doesn't sleep with him. She said to him, we don't need that shame. Let me take you from your mother's house. If you would have slept at home, I would not prevent you from having sexual relationships. And if you want, you can even come and live with me in the house of the Talmud Torah, and you will rent my part. The part that belongs to me, you could rent it out and take the money, because I have my property and I pay for the Talmud Torah, and I'm willing to give you my part of the courtyard. So this, up until this point, this responsa portrays a woman who is knowledgeable and independent. Yes, she went through difficulties, but she's able to negotiate with her husband to run her business. And the husband here is a lowlife, for lack of a better word. The husband says, I will not rent it out, and I will not take the rent, but rather either sit at home or let me marry another woman. He then tried to argue that he could provide for her, and he said, I will borrow money and I will buy wheat for you, and you should sit at home. She answered, my work is unlike any other type of work, because other works I could leave today and find tomorrow. But here it is about my clientele, my students, and if I would abandon them even one day, I cannot go back to teach and find them, because their parents will take them to other Talmudei Torah. Here we see the competition that exists between the schools. So she's competitive. She needs to keep her edge. She refuses to do what he asks her to do, and she says, although my son teaches with me, people really bring their children to school because of me, because he's still a young boy, and those two children, my sons, their only job, their only profession is teaching Torah, and they have to work with me. And if I will stop teaching, they will lose their income. We have no food, and as I know that you have done before, you are going to abandon me, and I will stay with my children and will be destroyed. So all this is the language of the person who asked the question, and he asks, Maimonides, please let us know, is she obligated to quit her work and go back to her previous situation? Would she be obligated to take care of his needs and to serve him when he does not provide for her food and provisions and garments, and does nothing from what the Torah has said? Does she have to give him permission to marry another woman? Please let us know. This is the question. So the way the person presents the question very much describes the man in a negative light, and the woman as an independent woman who has been suffering a lot but rose to the task and was able to take control over her life. And he says, does it make sense to force her to go back to her previous lifestyle? Does it make sense to make her to force her to serve him? And should she give him permission to marry another woman? Here is the response of Maimonides. Remember that Maimonides said that when a woman is moredet, she rebels against her husband, she loses everything. Now here is a more complicated situation. He says this: Hadin mehayev shekofin haba'al lemale tzorchei ishto כגון לבוש והוצאות וזולתי זה ממה שהוא חייב. So it is the obligation of the husband, and he could be forced to do that, to provide everything needed for his wife, such as expenses and garments and all that he is obligated towards her. And if he doesn't want to do that, or is unable to do that, we force him to divorce her, and to pay her the most recent part of the ketubah if he has. So he's not forced to get the money and pay her. It's only the meuhar means the possessions that were in lien to the ketubah and are still under his control, meaning that they were not sold in between the wedding and that day. And we know from the way the question was presented that man has no money. But here comes the surprising part. We would have thought that Maimonides would be on the wife's side in this case, and he says, "V'yesh laba'al limnoa ishto milelamed melacha o kri'ah." The husband is entitled to prevent his wife from being a teacher, teaching a profession, or teaching reading, and that I think is extremely surprising. But even if it is the halacha that the husband has control over his wife when there is a normal marriage and everything is okay, how can that be applied to a situation where the husband behaves with such indifference and even animosity towards his wife? But the Rambam, Maimonides, sticks to the law and offers a way for the woman to use legal fiction and bypass or override this halakha. He says what she should do is shetimurod v'tetzeh belo meuchar, that she should rebel against him. She should say that basically she has to put herself in a position of a woman who denies herself her husband's sexual relationship in order to tease him, and then she will be divorced with a lesser payment of the ketubah, and he will be forced to divorce her, and then she will be independent. Telamed mi shetirtze v'ta'aseh ma shetirtze. She could do whatever she wants. So this ruling is a half. He does try to find a solution for her, but it is not enough. She is advised to become a moredet, and remember that to be a moredet, to be a rebellious woman, means that it will take a year until she gets the get, until she gets the divorce. She will be denounced in the synagogues all over town. If that is what he means, that it's not really a good solution for her. So it's apparent from this teshuvah that had the authority had it been in the hands of the person who wrote the letter, he would definitely side with the woman. But Rambam, Maimonides, sides with the woman, but only partially. And he gives still some kind of authority or control to the husband. From here we go to another shul. This is Rashba of Barcelona, Rabbi Shlomo ben Adret, 1235 to 1310. So mid to late 13th century, beginning of the 14th century, and this is a shalau tshuva. This is a question that has to do with religious obligations. The Rashba is being asked the following: מצוות עשה שהזמן גרמה שאנשים פטורות, אם רצו לעשותה, מה הן בברכת המצווה? רשאיות לברך או לא? Those mitzvot that depend on time, such as tefillin, talit, blowing shofar, lulav, etc., that women are exempt of, what is the rule, what is the halacha if they wish to do it anyway? Are they allowed to say the bracha or not, or would it be considered the bracha in vain? And the person who asked the question says, even though I know that there is a dispute between the previous generations, between the rabbis, I want to know your opinion. The Rashba answers, you already know the dispute of the earlier generations, and I rule as the one who says that if they want, they can perform all the mitzvot and say the bracha, and my proof or my support comes from the story of Michal, the daughter of Shaul, which is brought in the Talmud. And according to the Talmud, Michal bat Shaul used to wear tefillin, and it does not say in the Talmud that people rebuked her, but rather that she did it, and there was no criticism. Still, Rashba doesn't have a proof that she said the bracha, only that she put on tefillin, and that's based on the midrashic interpretation of the Talmud. And his conclusion is, Ustama de milta keman de manachat mevarechet, and we must assume that if she put tefillin, she would say bracha for that. So here we find Rashba as being very open-minded and allowing women to participate and say the barachot. He bases it on an assumption that based on the story, midrashic story that is brought in the Talmud, and he says that if she did put on tefillin, she must have said the baracha, because it's impossible to put tefillin without saying baracha. And now we're going to read one more teshuvah from Rashba. This one is about marital duties. It says this: עוד שאלתם, אם הבעל חייב להכניס השפחה להציע לו את המיטה, מאחר שהיא קטנה, ואינה יודעת לאמן את ידיה במלאכה זו. The question was, if in case the wife is so young and she cannot set the bed yet, is the husband obligated to hire a maid or to buy a maid? We're talking about places where there was still slavery, to take care of that. His answer היא כל כך קטנה, שאינה יודעת להציע לו מיטה. If she's so young that she cannot set the bed, he cannot force her. This comes from the mindset of what my mind wrote, that one could force his wife to do that. He says, שאין זו כשפחה גמורה. She's not his maid. וכל שכן אם אין דרך בנות העיר לעשות כן. And even more so if it is not customary to do so in that place. ועוד תדעו, שכל מלאכות שמנו חכמים, you must know that all the other chores listed by the rabbis, that they said that a woman must perform for her husband, הכל הולך אחר מנהג המדינה. Everything depends on what is customary in that place. שאין מנהג המדינה להיות טוחנת ומצעת מיטות, ואינו יכול לחופה לעשותן. It is not the practice in that place for her to grind the wheat or to set the beds, and he cannot force her to do it. Also, אם אין דרך משפחתו, משפחתה בכך אינה חייבת בכך. If this is not customary in his family or her family, she does not have to do that. לפי שעולה עמו ואינה יורדת עמו, she has to go up with him and not down, and she should not do things that are reserved for servants. So this goes against what Maimonides said. Maimonides said that there are certain things that the woman would always be obligated to do, and Rashba says that everything depends on the custom of the Medina, of that place. We concluded that period of the early medieval time, and our next discussion will be of the Shuvot from the 15th century on.